we can't help we're gone. This is our identity.
Inside lane, missing exits, glued to the pavement. Between the lines, I'll keep my gaze straight ahead as the last stop flies by. No more waiting for the gun to fire. No more walking through revolving doors. I've gone around once, and I don't need to go around anymore. Break away, forget your sober case. Stop dwelling on empty words. Stop stalling in the doorway. And cancel the cruise control. Switch it in the manual. Don't you wanna feel right? Full steam through the setbacks. You can't win them all, but I'm proud I tried. Glad we had a dialogue. It's good to shape the mind. Speeding up the pace, turning up the heat. Where I need to be for the first time. Taking risks, I'm casting off without a lifeline. Break away, forget your sober case. Stop dwelling on empty words. Stop stalling in the doorway. And cancel the cruise control. Switch it in the manual. Don't you wanna feel right again? Don't you wanna feel whole? Don't you wanna feel?
Hey everybody, how you doing? Thank you for coming. This is kind of a really cool opportunity for me. Definitely a very cool guest for you guys today. Thank you for coming out. Um, and without much further ado, I'll call him in, and we can say hi. So, uh, let me call you in here, Ethan. So we are calling in Ethan Nicolle, co-writer of and co-creator of Axe Cop, and some other things, and we're gonna have a nice chat, shall we? We're boomers, so we use Skype. Do. Hi, Ethan.
Hello? Yeah,
How you doing?
pretty good.
Good. Thank you for coming out and hanging with us. I really appreciate that, man. So, how's your Friday going?
Oh, it's well, I'm laying in bed with electrodes strapped to my back
Okay.
'cause I have a pinched nerve in my neck from
Oh,
sitting badly while I draw all my life, and so I'm actually doing better than I've been doing, but I'm alternating every other day. I go to my desk and I lay in bed and work because it's been like I've been in bed for like a few months now.
okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear
So,
that.
yeah,
Well, I hope
ice
you
packs,
feel better.
ibuprofen, all that stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right. Well, but it sounds like you're still able to work. I guess you got your tablet there then.
I got a Windows Surface I draw on at home, and
Uh-huh.
then yeah. So
Okay, so what is
I have a good life. I just have a bad neck.
yeah? So what is it that you're drawing right now? Is this for the bear book or?
I'm always working on multiple stuff. Main thing I'm drawing right now is I'm doing a comic for a new publisher called Cave, and
Okay.
they're doing a comic called Appalachian Apocalypse. It's written by Billy Tucci.
Uh-huh.
You guys knew that. He made the comic She.
Okay.
Amazing artist, but so it's weird. I'm drawing his script, but it's a zombie comic. It takes place
Nice.
in Appalachia.
Nice. All right. Well, that's cool. So yeah, actually, well, I know that you're working on a bunch of different stuff. I know that you've got that the Bears Want to Kill You book, and I know it's
Yes.
coming out next May. Is that correct?
Around April or May is the goal.
Okay.
I've got it done pretty much. I'm getting it through kind of the final editing process, and I'm hoping to have it off the printers by the end of October.
Okay.
So October will kind of be the last chance to pre-order it and to get the special hardcover edition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, if people want to check that out.
Okay. Great. And so what was the? I mean, it sounds like I know that you kind of started your career with drawing Bearmageddon, and now we're kind of coming full circle with doing Bears Want to Kill You. Where is this obsession with bears coming from?
Well, technically, I didn't start my career with Bearmageddon. Kind of interesting. The first thing I did that actually mattered to anybody was, and only a few people, was a book called Chumblespuzz,
Mm-hmm.
and that got nominated for an Eisner Award. I did that on SLG, but hardly anybody actually bought it, but all the reviews were really good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny if you can get your hands on it, or you can actually get digital versions off my website. But
Okay.
I'm proud of it. It's ridiculous and funny and gross, and
Mm.
it's just bonkers. It's completely bonkers. Someone on the chat had said they would. I don't know if they have questions about it, but I'm pretty proud of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great.
And then after that, Chumblespuzz, I started working on Bearmageddon
Mm-hmm.
after I had started a couple other books and gave up on them.
Okay.
And then I had drawn the first like 20 pages of Bearmageddon when I kind of. Actually, I had written it and was ready to make it, and then I went and took my Christmas break,
Mm-hmm.
and then I made Axe Cop, kind of goofing off. So I hadn't actually put anything out for Bearmageddon.
Mm-hmm.
So after I made Axe Cop, I came home and I drew the first 22 pages of Bearmageddon, and then we posted Axe Cop online as a precursor to Bearmageddon just to get the feel for posting webcomics as kind of just a trial run,
Mm-hmm.
not expecting anybody to really read it. And then it took over my life.
Okay.
It went viral.
Yeah.
And then, so Bearmageddon was always in the back burner. And so Axe Cop was like my cheat
Mm-hmm.
bonus comic that I never intended to get big and to take off, and it just happened to. And Bearmageddon's been my that never happened with it.
Mhm.
But it's been I just experiment in all these ways to promote it. And it's one of the ways that I experimented with promoting it was, when you have a webcomic, nobody wants to actually share a page of a comic. Even if they like the comic, they're not going to be like, oh, I'm just going to share this page.
Mhm.
Things got to be more memey and clicky.
Sure.
So I started making memey clicky things, these bear memes, and I kind of created this I don't know, genre where it was just these stupid bear jokes and bear safety things for like a world where Bearmageddon had fully happened and was kind of beyond ridiculousness.
Yeah.
And so then I created a website called Bearmageddon News Network with all these memes and news, kind of like the Onion but bears with bears. And you can check that out. It's just ridiculous and stupid and fun. But those things built their own audience. There was some crossover between the comic. I mean, my goal of making them was people to actually check them out, and hopefully some people would find the comic through it. But it kind of became its own thing, and so when I decided to make a book of them, because I had so much content I had created on that website,
Right.
and I just felt like I was doing all those things for free, and I figured so I did a Kickstarter for a book, and
Okay.
it's funded. I'm working on it.
Cool. So, I mean, is this sort of like a lifelong obsession with bears, or is this just something that you just dawned on you one day?
It's
or?
weird. I've always liked I like my story. I like Bearmageddon. I think it's awesome. And so, everything else is around just trying to get people to read it and check it out, really. And I don't know why. I've had a tough time getting publishers to go for it. And I don't know exactly why. But so it's just mine. So I just I'm my own marketing team on that thing, and I don't know why. I don't know if I just am blind to how bad it is, but I'm proud of it. I love it. I think it's ridiculous to be the greatest movie on earth that was ever made, and so we all got to have our passion project, and we don't always get to pick our successes, but
yeah.
So that's and I think I'm going to make greater things than that, obviously, in my life. But it's not that I think it's brilliant. I just think it's a blast. And
anyway. I liked what I saw of it. It looks definitely a little different than Axe Cop, and I think it's cool. It's your passion project, and I mean at the end of the day, as long as it's something that you enjoy doing. I mean, and if you've got something else to pay the bills, then
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, getting to Axe Cop, yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it, that it was just sort of something you did as a goof, and I listened to your, it was like an interview you did, I think it was called Making Comics. It was a podcast you did with Doug Tenaple.
Oh, Jason Brubaker?
Yeah.
Doug Tenaple?
Yeah. So I kind of heard the backstory, and you said, that you were just kind of hanging out with your brother Malachi, and it was just I guess it was just like a game that he played. He just made up called Axe Cop.
It wasn't even that. I mean, it's just do you want to play? And then he picks a toy up, and it's do you want to play Rubber Hammer? I don't know.
Okay.
He wanted to play. He wanted to play cops, but he didn't have a toy gun. He had a toy axe, so it was a fireman axe. He had a fireman kit that he'd just been in one of those fireman days where you go and sit in the truck and eat chili and shake hands with firemen, and then you hear the siren and you cry because you're a little kid and it's scary and loud.
Yeah.
So he had a fake axe and a hat and a badge and stuff. So, and in fact, he might have even not understood that firemen and cops were different kinds of. I don't know. I think he probably did, but he created the word axe cop, thinking that was an actual job that people had. You fight people with an axe and you're a cop. So
sure.
Immediately, what I got. So that's what makes it such a fun collaboration, is that between what he says and how I perceive it is what you get when you see Axe Cop. So for me, I immediately saw Burt Reynolds, barrel-chested cop, that he bucks all the rules of the police force and uses an axe instead of a gun.
Right.
And he doesn't even care. He's got an axe.
Right. And I mean
so,
right, and what I picked up from the character, from what I've read and what I watched in the cartoon, it just he's sort of the ultimate power fantasy. He can do or whatever he wants. He's invulnerable. Any sort of situation he'll always win, and he'll always get out of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, cool, cool. So, so kind of walk me through. I mean, the viral thing must have been kind of crazy. I seem to remember because I mean, I've been following you for a while, and I remember at one point, I think it was when Simon Pegg was still on Twitter. I think people were trying to get him to read Axe Cop. Does that sound familiar to
Yeah.
you?
Oh yeah.
Did he actually
Yep.
do it?
Yeah. Yeah. People were like tweeting him, and those were crazy times. Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, people were sharing it with me to get saying, we need Simon Pegg to read Act Cop, which is crazy. And then enough, and then the fact that he actually, I think the first thing he said, like he did tweet, like I guess I'm gonna have to check out Axe Cop, and then he said, "Man, this is great." And then later I posted a page a couple weeks later, and he retweeted it and said, as like in all caps, "I love Axe Cop."
Wow, that's pretty fantastic. Well, that probably, kind of
That was
helped.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, probably pretty surreal, and definitely helped you with the viral push. Someone from the chat. This is a question for Ethan. But what happened to the 12 multicolored frozen Christian rubber chickens?
This person must be from my hometown.
Okay.
That was a ska band that I was secretly in.
Okay.
I actually was I was undercover as a guy named Chicken X, and I wore a football helmet with a Lone Ranger mask with a rubber chicken on top of it, and a cape and knee pads.
What
I had
did
this
you
whole
play?
Costume. I played bass.
Okay.
That was the thing. Like the band they couldn't keep a bass player, and I was in my own band.
Hmm.
And so he just kind of made this joke that like I'd always fill in as the superhero playing bass for them until they could get a regular bass player.
Uh-huh.
And so I'd just go crazy when I was in the band. I'd just play the bass behind my head and jump, just act like a psycho.
Okay.
And
What
anyway, I
were-
don't know what happened to them. I don't remember at all. I was never technically a member of the band. I mean, I just like when they had a show they wanted me to play. Their songs were very easy, but I mean, we all went on. My friend Anthony was in that band. He and I started a band called Lunar Active later on. That was the band that I was in where we actually played and put out albums for like 7 years. You can look that up on like iTunes and
Mhm.
Pandora and stuff. And then he helped me create AxeCop.com.
Oh, okay, great.
And it was me and him who used to joke around about bears and a character named Dickinson Killdeer.
Mhm.
That all led to me writing Bearmageddon. So
Okay, cool, cool. So were these original songs? Were these covers? Or...
Yep.
Oh, they were
yeah,
original.
in Lunar Active, I
Okay.
sang. I wrote a lot of the music, especially a lot of lyrics. Yeah, ridiculous. I mean, that was like my life for a good 7 years. Like we were trying.
So what was it? What were the themes? I mean, what kind of? You said it was ska. So I mean, what it is, or tell me more
Well, the
about.
12 Monthly Colored Frozen Christian Rubber Chickens was a ska band, but that wasn't my band. My band, Lunar Active, was the band I was in.
Okay.
We always called ourselves punk ninja metal, so we had a lot of songs about regret because we were a pop punk band, or kind of like metal pop punk with like a lot of like palm riffy like cool guitar licks and a lot of vocal harmonies,
Mhm.
and then throwing in some screaming because we were from the early 2000s, so everybody
Okay.
was screaming all the time and everything.
Uh,
And but then we had like sci-fi type songs, like we had songs about androids rebelling, and we had songs about samurais killing each other,
okay.
and just a bunch of random stuff. Like there's some
Alright.
funny. We wrote a whole ballad about. We had a song called "The Ballad of Billy Lee," and it's the story of all the Double Dragon games back to back, like, and how Billy Lee's girlfriend just keeps getting kidnapped by the Shadow Gang, who
and punched in the
they
stomach.
take over the world, and their first order of business is to steal Marianne from Billy Lee. And like it goes through all the story, the whole thing, and it's a very epic, like kind of like a heavy metal Queen
Uh-huh.
ballad. It's like really insane.
That that's awesome. It's funny, like you're talking like about this band, and I'm probably way off, but like my initial thought was like Man or Astro Man, and
We were fans of Mano Astro Man. They're more rockabilly, aren't they? I'm trying to think.
surf guitar.
Surf guitar, yeah. No, we were. Anthony was a big fan of Manor, Astro Man, and I'm trying to think of who else. Shoot, but yeah,
Okay.
He's a big fan of that genre, and Lunar Active started off a lot more like that. Like it was really simple, a bit rockabilly and pop punk mixed together, kind of like Blink 182 and a little bit of rockabilly. And then
Okay.
as I joined, I was more into like kind of more planned out music, and then Brandon, who joined, was an amazing guitar player and very technical. He's a music teacher now.
Okay.
So we brought this whole, like, Anthony had this like kind of like good at writing hooks and a good entertainer, and yeah, we're a good team.
So was this before Axe Cop?
Yeah. well
Okay.
before.
Okay. So all right. So
You can look up on YouTube "Mission to the Moon Lunar Active." That's a full animated music video that I made. I spent a month animating
Holy
music.
cow.
Video.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I will definitely check that out. Okay, so we kind of talked about, like the, the initial viral popularity when, Axe Cop hit. So I'm very curious how you pitched the cartoon to Fox.
Well, it was pretty easy. They called me up and said, "Can we make a cartoon of this?"
Okay. So you really didn't have to pitch it at all.
No, the pitch was out there. It went through like there was some weird thing at Adult Swim where they weren't interested. At first, they did. It was funny because the first contact I got from Adult Swim was their guy over there goes, "Yo, what's up, Malachi? We should meet up for drinks." He didn't even realize that there's a 5-year-old involved. Like, he's inviting Malachi to get drinks.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, wait, I didn't realize you were 5. I guess you can't get drinks."
Well, you can get a Shirley Temple or something.
But I love that. It was so telling of the content of Adult Swim that, like, a 5-year-old could write content and they wouldn't realize that, like, they wouldn't realize that. Like, oh, this really fits our brand.
Yeah, no kidding, especially with some of the cartoons that that are coming out lately. That's great. So,
But then there's interest from Cartoon Network. So there was kind of there was talk, but then I wasn't crazy about the deal, and which I mean is basically just buy it out. I think, which is kind of their typical. They just kind of give us their typical boilerplate, which usually means like we'll buy this up in case anything bigger happens with it, then we'll use it. Otherwise, we'll just lock it in a vault. The thing that Fox did, they started this new block of programming, and the guy who was running it, Nick Weidenfeld, had come from Adult Swim. He already had his eyes on Axe Cop. He thought this was making a great show.
Right.
He'd already talked to Nick Offerman, who's already a fan of Axe Cop, about being Axe Cop.
Okay.
And so they were already already talking about it, and he wanted to be the first. It was like their first show that they put on ADHD. It was like they were ready to go. They knew they wanted it, and so on that deal, which a lot of these deals, you don't actually know it's going to get made. They're going to option it, which means it's locked up and no one else can use it.
Right.
And it may not get made, and it may get changed a lot. Like if Cartoon Network had taken it, they probably would have changed it to much more of a kids show. He might even have an axe anymore. Who knows what would have happened to him.
Oh God, yeah.
And so I knew that at least on the Fox one, I knew it was for sure actually going to get made. I knew it was low money. People imagine that the moment you have something on TV that you become a billionaire. It's not true.
Right.
But you have a show that's on for 10 minutes, in the middle of the night on Sundays. It's not like Fox isn't raking in money from that.
Right.
They're not paying you a lot.
Right. Oh, no, it's funny. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just. I lost my train of thought. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, you kind of answered my next question, which was, how did Offerman kind of get brought into the deal? But so he was a fan.
Yeah, his writing partner, a guy named Martin, he was a big fan. He's one of those guys that when you're a creator and you mail stuff to your fans, you sell stuff online.
Right.
There become names that you like recognize regularly. Like, oh man, every time I sell stuff, this guy pops up. Like I'd sell artwork around Christmas time every year, and he'd pop up. So I started recognizing this guy's name. And then one day he messaged me. He says, "Hey, my writing partner is this guy Nick Offerman. He's on Parks and Rec."
Yeah.
And I'm like, and everybody had been telling me like this is the thing that. When we met, it was a funny thing. Like he was saying that everyone kept telling him that he's Axe Cop, and he didn't know what Axe Cop was, and everyone kept telling me that Axe Cop is Ron Swanson.
Right.
And I didn't really know. I didn't watch Parks and Rec at the time. I didn't really know about Ron Swanson.
Right.
And so when we met, he had read, because of Martin, he had read Axe Cop, and he he really loved it. Like the proof of that was when he showed up at the first meeting for the Axe Cop TV show. He had his personal copies of the Axe Cop books.
Oh God.
And they were all dog-eared and bent up, and they had bookmarks in them and markings, and like they were like the most tattered copies of Axe Cop I'd ever seen. I was really flattered by that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, he's just, the marriage of the voice and the character, it just works so well because he really has that kind of, macho bravado that you really don't. I mean, you kind of get a taste of it a bit in Parks and. I mean, well, the attitude is there. It's just he's much more subtle and quiet in Parks and Rec, but it very much takes over in Axe Cop. So I'm curious, with the cartoon. So how much creatively were you involved with that, and Malachi as well? I mean, did you have a lot of creative freedom? Was it just you were kind of there in name alone? What was the story with that?
For the most part, I got to be in there in the initial stages of writing for everything, for at least probably 60-70% of season 1, and probably about 60% of season 2, maybe 50%. The workflow at ADHD was kind of unique because it's not common for studios to make everything in house in America. Like they usually they kind of pre-produce it all here, then they send it off overseas to be animated. Everything on ADHD was animated in house by a pretty small team. All the shows, although there's a writing team there that was writing everything, all their different shows had writers that worked on all the shows. So there's a lot of crossover. People that were doing voices on their other shows were doing voices of Axe Cop, and a lot of the animators and stuff were doing on multiple shows. So it was like just a giant block of programming. So it was very fast paced, and I didn't live there. I didn't work on all the shows. I wasn't part of that team. So like, I started realizing as it got closer to the need for the seasons to be finished, they got more and more quiet with like getting me in on meetings, because they were just like basically, the way I could tell, they were flying into the room and being like, all right, we got to write this freaking episode because we're, a small team cranking all these cartoons without sending them out overseas or anything. So it was that, and around that time was when I got married, so I had my life was crazy, and I live out of town a bit, about an hour drive from LA, so they always feel like they didn't want to inconvenience me for like a 10-minute meeting or something. So anyway, I sat in the writer's room. I had input. I did some writing, and then I didn't realize at the time when I wrote it, but the very last episode of the whole series of season 2, I wrote the script, Baboons Rising.
Okay. Was Malachi involved at all with that, or?
Yeah, he was off and on. If we hit something, a snag in a story, we'd always call him up for input, and I did call him up when I was writing the Baboons Rising script. Was my idea, like it was my concept, where baboons take over the world, which came from an Axe Cop comic where the baboons take over the world and Axe Cop just feeds them all poison blow up juice or whatever. But I took it to where it's more Planet of the Apes, and they actually do take over the world, and when the humans think they've defeated them, they actually shrunk and gone into our DNA and become like a new disease, like baboon flu or something.
Okay. And
so Axe Cop's solution for that is to shrink bears down so that they can fight them inside of our immune systems. Anyway, so I called Malachi and told him like, that was my premise. Got any ideas on that? And he'd kind of gotten into like I think some of his input was like you have to go to the god of bears and the god of baboons, and they have to fight and stuff. So, and that made it in there too.
So, kind of in retrospect now. So now it's been like I think 3 years since like the ending of season 2. So I mean, in retrospect, as a whole, I mean, how happy are you with the cartoon?
I think it's great. I mean,
okay.
I mean. For the budget and everything that they had on that thing, and if you look at the other shows and that, I think they did a great job. I mean, everybody seemed to really like working on it.
Well, I'm glad it was a positive experience. I mean, I definitely, I was definitely a fan of it. When I was reading the web comic, and I mean, like I said, we actually met briefly once. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, at a con in Maine. I think it was about 4 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that convention. I remember being a little bit. I can never tell. I don't know. Some of those that one, some of the conventions. I'm a little. It was around that time too. I was starting to. I had always gone to any convention I was invited to,
Uh-huh.
and then it's around the time that I was kind of like. I suddenly was like getting married, and I had people that needed me to be there, and then I was going to conventions, and sometimes they weren't. It was like, why am I leaving home? You know. So there's a couple conventions where I get out there and I actually really needed to make money or something, and it kind of ruined the experience for me. And I remember getting some comments from people saying that I was a jerk, and I said, I don't think I was ever directly a jerk to anybody, but I'd kind of just like, for one thing, I'm actually naturally a shy person, and then which makes me look like a jerk.
Well,
and then
okay. Well, I didn't think that you were a jerk. You were.
Okay,
You
sweet.
you seem pretty nice to me. You know,
All right,
I
cool.
bought
Was
Volume
worried,
1,
yeah.
and you did a little Axe Cop sketch for me. I was very happy.
Cool. All right, good.
I think
I was
that
like
was
preempting a thing that never even happened, I guess.
yeah. No, it's okay. I think that was the same con. I think it was Linnea Quigley was there, and I think that was like I was just like hanging out.
Yeah, I remember that con because I'm such a big fan of the Mystery Science Theater guys.
Yes.
And I had already had Kevin Murphy had hosted our panel at San Diego Comic-Con.
Okay.
And then the next year, Mike Nelson had hosted it.
Uh-huh.
As you know, and then so finally, like Bill was the last one I really wanted to get, and he was going to be there, and I got to hang out with them a lot at that convention. That was really fun. It was a small convention, and so I got to like sit have a nice long man-to-man with Kevin Murphy that evening, and hung out with Bill later, and I also got to hang out and talk to Kevin Eastman quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, he was at that show? I don't remember he was.
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen him a couple of times. But yeah, that was honestly the main draw for, was seeing Mystery Science Theater and Linnea Quigley, and you were a bonus.
Nice.
But yeah, actually, I, kind of geeking out with on Mystery Science for a bit. I actually saw, I bought a an original poster of the Mystery Science Theater movie of This Island Earth, and I actually went to a live show of Cinematic Titanic, so I actually got that poster signed by Joel, by why am I saying Pearl? What's her name? You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
J. Elvis, and then the other two that I'm totally Frank and the other two. But yeah, so Trace Boulieu. Yeah.
I can't remember the other guy. Frank Conniff?
Yes, Frank. So I got all those, and then of course they were at then I brought that up to Maine, and I got Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy wasn't there, so I got that. So the only one who's left on my poster is that I need is Mike Nelson, and I I remember asking Bill, I was like, how do I get this to Mike? And he's like, okay, what you need to do is you need to go back to the back of the venue, and you need to bring this guy some meat. Like, okay, so I'm not gonna get a straight answer. That's okay. And it's funny because
Mike doesn't do a lot of events anymore. He mostly just does the live Rift Tracks events. I don't even think he does conventions much anymore. Well,
so I'm probably gonna have to give up on that dream. And the other thing that was kind of cool about that was I got to talk to Kevin Murphy because I was a big fan, when it was still on Sci-Fi, or yeah, I think it was on Sci-Fi. I had written a fan letter because I'm a big geek, and basically said, hey, can you send me some autographs? I got back, like, forever later, a picture of, it was just like a promo picture of the entire group, and like it was kind of like a montage, and all that was written on it was Ook Bobo, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, so Bobo signed it. And I said to him, I'm like, did you sign that? He's like, yeah, that's how I signed them. Okay, so mystery solved. I mean, this was like, like 15 or something years later, and I like finally, so getting some closure on that. was
Nice.
pretty fantastic. But no, it's cool that you're a fan as well, because it's definitely a show that I think is important in the kind of the geek uh, landscape.
Yeah.
So there's some other stuff that I didn't want to talk forever about Axe Cloud, because there's some other things I do want to kind of pick your brain about, because I mean you and I have kind of tweeted a little bit, kind of back and forth about a couple of things. Like, one of the things I do remember we tweeted about was the Cal Arts style. And you were mentioning how this was kind of something that you saw a lot of, and that was kind of becoming, like, I guess maybe a bit of a standard in cartoons. So
How style. Is that? I'm
like
trying to think what that was. Like, someone told me about that. I don't think I actually used that term.
okay, well, like well, the kind of like I think it was brought up because of the Thundercats roar,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and you said it
Yeah,
was
it's, I mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
my main thing was just that I know this isn't a popular. Well, actually, I figured this wasn't a popular opinion, but then when I posted that, it seemed like to actually resonate with quite a few people. But
Hmm.
I've always, and I have this problem with children's literature too. Like, I was just talking to a literary agent about this. Who I have a children's book, like a middle grade novel I wrote. That I'm really proud of it. It's really fun, kind of Roald Dahl, spooky, creepy, funny, silly
Hmm.
story about a kid who turns into a possum and chased by this monster. Anyway, there's bears, and I'm very proud of it. I'm working on it. I filled it with illustrations, so it's
Hmm.
probably a book that would be around 300 pages if it was text. But then there's like another extra, actually maybe less, maybe like 270, and then it's closer to 400 because I've got so many illustrations in it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, like one of his feedback on it was like, well, they're too graphic novel-y. Like the drawings are like, which I think what he meant was they're too deep.
Hmm.
And he gave me those examples of books that have good illustrations for kids, and like they're always really sketchy and scribbly, and like even the one guy you're not supposed to ever like say anything bad about is Quentin Blake, who did all the art on the Roald Dahl books.
Okay.
And I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan of like art that looks like you scribbled it out and like kind of just like let the reader make up their mind. Like I always like polished, good art, like that's solid and like
Right.
expressive and cool lines. And so some of that might be on my own pet peeve, but like
Hmm.
I've pitched at these places a lot, especially Cartoon Network, and it just always drives me nuts. Like the designs that make it are so like they look, I don't know,
Yeah.
like a 10-year-old could have come up with it, like
Right.
and then that's not talking the animation, and especially like that Thundercats opening. I love that animation on that. It's awesome. But I'm just tired of that style. Just like, man.
Right. Right. I mean, like
It's
Steven
easy.
Universe kind of.
Yeah, Steven Universe. I love Adventure Time,
Hmm.
but it's kind of like how The Matrix was great when it came out, but it ruined action movies.
It definitely ruined the two sequels.
Yeah. But I mean, just that every action movie had to be The Matrix after that, and like you lost they stopped making diehards and
Yes.
lethal weapons because The Matrix is like, oh, everybody's ballerinas with guns,
Right.
and that's how it feels on with cartoons. Like it's like, oh wait, it works to draw what looks like 12-year-old napkin art.
Hmm.
All right, let's do that from now on.
Hmm.
And now everybody's doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hoping it's something that they kind of get out of, because I mean, there's so many, well-drawn cartoons that just seem to, kind of fall by the wayside, and then you get this stuff that's sort of like consumed by the masses, and it just looks so, like, I mean, for example, I mean, I know that you're, from what I saw on that podcast, I know that you're like me, you're a big fan of the original Eastman and Laird, even though that, like, you admit that I mean, they weren't the best artists, but it was still cool.
Yeah, and you can just see the passion in their art. Like you can see they loved what they were making.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, what I loved about it, I mean, and it didn't transfer too well to the cartoon, but I mean, it was gritty. It was, if I remember correctly, they actually used profanity, and that it was.
Yeah, they drank beer. They were very violent.
I remember one comic in particular, and oh god, I wish I still had it. Like they were on some kind of highway, and I think they were with Casey Jones, and like the more that people were driving on this highway, the more that they turned into like monsters, and it's like this was never something that you would see in the cartoon. But I mean, the reason I'm kind of mentioning is if, I mean, if you see the newest iteration of the Turtles cartoon, it's just terrible looking.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Have you seen it?
yeah, and it's all yeah, and it does feel like it's going for that. It's kind of that weird. I don't know. I don't know if it's like Japanese influenced or like, but like the kind of almost like the Hello Kitty or I don't know what the. There's this weird. A lot of it looks like 8-bit
Yeah.
characters or something. Like they're going for this retro thing.
Mm.
I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm just old now or something, and I just don't get it.
No, I'm probably with you, man. And it's just yeah, it's like I look at it and it's like, hey, there's a new Turtles cartoon, awesome. Maybe I'll check that out. And then I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna pass. Same thing with Thundercats. Same thing. Well, even though I mean I probably wouldn't have watched She-Ra, but I mean it just the character design on that I just was not a fan of.
And even all that, like, I understand that they're marketing to kids today, not to us. Like,
Right.
I'm probably not gonna watch even a well done remake of one of the cartoons I grew up watching. Like, I just don't watch cartoons generally. Like, I might watch some, but like, I don't got a lot of time in a day. If it's a beautiful animation, I want to watch it or whatever. But, I watch. If I'm gonna work on a show, I watch a bunch of episodes. But.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I get that because I worked on VeggieTales for 3 years. That was insane, and that was an experience. But it was like we were trying to recreate the show for kids today who they binge and they watch. They get a lot of comedy, fast paced, and it was also a very low budget show. Everything had to take place in very limited amounts of 3D settings and props and stuff. And so old fans were like. Came down with Thor's hammer on us. They were very, very mad about the changes that were made. But it's just context. It's like between budget and who you're marketing, because you're actually marketing to. Like everybody screaming about a cartoon on the internet aren't generally actually the people that would have paid money for it in the first place. Like, their audience is kids who don't tend to comment on YouTube videos.
I saw that you did a little work on Teen Titans Go as well. Like how involved were you with that?
I've written 4 scripts for them at this point.
Okay. So you're still actively working with them, or kind of like a freelancer, or?
Yeah, all their writers are hired freelance. So like I could get hired again. I don't know what. It's like. It was. I did 2 scripts for them, and then a year later they had me do 2 more scripts. So it's just kind of an off and on. If they want me, then like I don't know. I check in once in a while.
So how is that kind of stepping into DC characters?
It's unique. I mean, I like that show just because it doesn't. I mean, I don't know my DC or Marvel universe very well. I never was into superhero comics very much. I grew up on indie comics, but I like the humor, and so I do my best to figure that out. And they'd kind of give me, the background and what characters to use for what or whatever. So.
Okay.
But it was fun. I like it just because I had come off of VeggieTales, which was very strict on what you could joke about. It's very strict on budget because it's 3D, but it's very low budget 3D. So like people don't realize that the reason those cheap 3D cartoons make such weird decisions a lot of the time is because they only have certain. Like every time you ask for a prop in one of those shows, it costs the company however many thousands of dollars from somebody to make it. So like it's very limited.
Okay.
So it's different. But on a 2D cartoon, anything can happen.
Right.
And so suddenly I'm on, I'm writing a Teen Titans script after writing about 65 scripts for VeggieTales. It's insane. And suddenly, like, I can joke about way more stuff. I can have, anything can happen. So that was fun.
Okay, cool. It's funny because and sort of in the preparation for talking to you, I was listening to this. I also listened a bit to you kind of got name dropped by Doug TeNapel on the recent episode of Comicsgate Live with Even Van Sciver, and it was a weird reference. Yeah, and it was like it was so out of nowhere because they were talking about, of all things, Patty Duke. And then they mentioned Sean Astin was Patty Duke's son. And then Doug said, "Oh yeah, I had dinner with him once with Ethan Nicolle."
Yeah.
I take it you remember that.
Oh yeah, it was this event, and yeah, the funny thing is, like, we'd all piled into 2 cars to go to this thing, and then one of the guys who drove the cars just took off with the car. So then
Oops.
there's all of us there, like me and actually this part of the dinner Doug wasn't at, but there's these other guys. Doug Jones, the guy that played Silver Surfer.
I've met him. Yep.
Yeah, nicest guy in Hollywood.
Yeah, he
was there.
He insisted on giving me a hug when I met him. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
man.
He's super kind, like that. Yeah, hugs, and he's awesome.
Yep.
But yeah, and then so we all pile in this car, and I'm probably at my peak weight at that time. I'm like over 300 pounds.
Right.
And we're all crying. It's one of those moments. You're a fat guy, and you're like, everybody's cramming in, like, oh yeah, well, I'll sit 4 people across and then sit in the trunk, and like, there's no way I'm gonna fit anywhere but the passenger seat. And Sean Astin is here, like,
Right.
he clearly gets the front seat.
He gets shocked.
But he he noticed, he knew, like, he did his best not to embarrass me. He just like goes, hey, I'll take the hatchback, and like he squeezed in and sat in the trunk basically.
Jeez.
So that I could get that seat up front. And then the guy who was driving, because this is this weird event where they're pairing up people with money who might want to invest in creative stuff. So it was kind of pairing up creative people with money people. The guy driving was a money guy. He had this like slick back gelled hair, and you could tell his whole plan of the night was to drive back with Sean Astin in the passenger seat, and then there he was with me. He seemed very disappointed.
Well, it's a
Sean
little
Astin's
weird.
pretty nice.
It's just thinking like, instead he got Sean Astin in the trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's probably a lot more rare.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, this kind of brings me to, I know it's kind of a hot button topic. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I kind of wanted to tread lightly into talking about Comicsgate, if you're cool with that. If not, I understand.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Talking about it.
Okay, because I know that.
I do want to quickly address, because someone in the comments is near and dear to my heart is asking about Chumblespuzz, and I already mentioned it, but I just want to say thanks for even talking about it. Jadri1, however you say that name.
Okay.
The question isn't really. I mean, they're cartoon characters, so they haven't actually been up to anything. But someday, I would like to make Chumblespuzz like a hardcover, larger print edition that has everything in it, and maybe a bonus story. Maybe someday. But anyway, it's okay. On to
Comicsgate. Yeah,
Comicsgate. And getting doxxed and attacked by the internet if I talk about this.
No. Well, it and that was another thing that we kind of tweeted, briefly back and forth about. It seems like, and this is, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of are taking sort of a neutral stance. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just my stance is I pretty much try to look at individuals, unless, like, if a group states that their intentions are, like, if they're organized to inflict harm on people or to harass people, and that's their stated intentions, then, like, yeah, I'm against that group.
Right.
But I know people that identify themselves Comicsgate, and
yeah, it's
not something I don't want to step behind that wall and say, like, and then say anybody. Yeah. I don't want to limit my audience like that.
Right. No, I understand that.
And I just don't like it. I don't like it happens on the if it's right and left. I don't like how it happens on the left is obsessed with it. Mobbing up. They love to create mobs, and they love to create this and that resistance and this and that, and I hate it, and I think it's dumb, and it's all it reminds me, it reeks of like high school cliques, like just everybody has, like, who's with the cool kids here and who's gonna sit in this part of the hallway in a big circle and you can't walk by.
Right.
Like, I just hate how everybody has to click up and so they can feel cool and secure, and I feel like it goes straight back to, like, cave times, tribalism, and I feel like that's been what's happening in our culture big time, is like responsive oh, fine, you guys are going to tribe up, we're tribing up, and like everybody, and I don't like that. Like I feel like that's how we got Trump,
Right.
And not just, you know,
Yeah, it's
the attitude, like the attitude of the Trump supporter, which I know a lot of people who support Trump who I love. I'm not saying they're all bad people, but there is this attitude like we're going to take our country back and this is our country now, and it's just like that's such a wrong way to see, and both sides are like this, but
right.
the whole idea of America is that a huge vast number of views and ideas are going to be here, and they have to be able to coexist here, and you can't just be like, oh, this is our country now. It's like, no,
Right.
it's never meant to be that way. Like, not one side gets to create their utopia and the other side just, grits their teeth in sackcloth and ashes, weeping and crying over the remains of the society they hoped that, it's not how it's supposed to be. Like, everyone should be a little uncomfortable because no one's going to really get their way if America survives, I think so.
Right. Yeah, and what I've seen of it, I mean, I do, watch, Van Sciver's, shows a lot, and what I'm seeing, from my perspective, makes sense in that, it sounds like, they're really fed up with, this, especially, what kind of clicks with me, is their stance about, customer service, because that just seems to have gone out the window, and it's not just in, comics. It just seems like in general, especially with with social media, where I mean, where did the whole? I mean, to be fair, the term the customer is always right. I'm not a big fan of that, but at the same time, I understand the value of treating your customers nicely. But I mean, now I feel like it's become this culture of trash customers, and then you'll get all kinds of high fives on social media and yas, slay queen. You know what I mean? So I mean, are you seeing that as well in comics, or what's your take?
Well, I see the for sure the PC culture is like huge in comics, and I don't read Marvel and DC comics. I've never been a collector of them. I don't follow the stories, so I don't like have that. Like, seems like a lot of Comicsgate people are very passionate about that part of the industry, and I'm not really deep into it. It's precious to them. It's not precious to me. So like that's straight up right there, like where I'm different a lot from a lot of those guys.
Right.
But I do one area that I really sympathize with Comicsgate, which is something I was thinking about, that I was like, it would be cool to create a group where it's like the main point is just to say it doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left. It's okay to be whatever you are. We're not going to be crazy. It's not you have to be this way or think this way, or shut up. Like, because that is how the comics and most arts industries feel if you are any bit conservative.
Right.
It's just like there's no, and to me, like, freedom of speech is super important, and creating the best path for people to actually talk to each other. I'm a big fan of like the Rubin Report and Joe Rogan podcasts and these places where like people from the right and the left come on and they talk and they don't have these like giant walls up to certain people like, no, that person is a Nazi by our definition.
Right.
There's no harm in talking. Talk, it's, if people aren't talking, they're killing each other. Like, we got to be talking. And so that's another reason I don't want to wall myself off into a group where it feels like even if they don't consider themselves extremists, they're seen as that. It's creating that that divide, making it bigger. But anyway, the area that I really sympathize with Comicsgate is that the overtake of PC culture, the pressure to think that way, and to shut up if you don't think that way,
Right.
And to look for that community where not just community of other people who maybe are more conservative, but people who are like, I'm not conservative, but I don't think you're a Nazi, and let's talk about it. Like, that's it. Like, that's all I want. I just want people to say, like, you know what? I don't have it all figured out. You don't have it all figured out. We disagree on a lot of things, but we should talk about it.
Yeah, and that was I mean, you and I grew up, in the 80s and 90s. Like, this really wasn't, a thing, where it was just. I mean, there were definitely social issues, but it never came down to such a severe case of identity politics.
Yeah.
Where especially, I mean, you just saw it the other day with the whole Ernie and Bert thing. For God's sake, I
Oh.
mean, I saw you get frustrated with that as well, and it's just like, insanely dumb. Like, and I think Oz had a great point. It's like, do we really need these kind of definers, on these characters? Why do we have to, put these labels on them? Can't they just
Mm-hmm.
be as they are? They're puppets.
Yeah.
but it just seems like the forever offended will just swoop in and they, I mean, like, some of the ways that these people were talking to him. This guy's a legend.
I know.
And they're just
Yeah.
people completely disrespecting him, and I feel bad because I've seen the guy tweet, and I mean, obviously I've seen because I'm a big Star Wars geek, so I've seen interviews and stuff like that, and he always comes across as just very soft spoken, very kind, very gentle, and just kind of like a Mr. Rogers type, and so to see these people just just bully him like that, it was kind of heartbreaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's crazy. I have to believe that those are people are a minority, and they're just loud, and they really like to be on the internet a lot, and they really like to yell at people on the internet. But I have to believe I will lose hope in mankind if that's the majority, or
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I, even when I posted that thing saying, like, I posted the one tweet that for a day I was the villain of the internet because of Comicsgate, because I said something remotely positive about Comicsgate. It was I just said something not negative enough. I just said, I really think it's tribal, and but I also said I think the people who are anti are going overboard, and calling them just a massive group of hateful bigot harassers. Like, it's such a broad thing to call a whole group of people that are, maybe that there probably are some people in there that are jerks and who've done bad things like that. Since then, I've tried to find the examples of actual harassment. I've talked to people who are anti-comic skaters. I've gone over with them, like, show me links to, like, I want to see, like, what is the harassment. And every example that I was shown, they were shouting matches on Twitter, and the people that were anti-comic skate were saying just as awful things, even worse things. I mean, it's like there's this double standard where, like, if you're on the left, or if you feel like you're fighting for you're punching up, fighting for the little guy, then you can literally say anything to anybody. You can say the most horrible things, and that's not harassment. But if you're coming from a perceived something that has been labeled Nazi, even though it has nothing to do with Nazis, then then anything they say is harassment. Anything they say is they need to be convicted of a crime for it.
Right.
And I've seen this, like, culture of, I don't know, of lying about, or just labeling, like that the alt-right label is insane. Anybody doesn't like something, like, label them alt-right, and it's just become the thing to do.
Yeah. All anti-Comicsgate is alt-right, apparently, and they're Nazis. And I love this. There's one thing in particular that people love to cling on to, towards Van Sciver, which I guess was just like a sketchbook that he did. I think it was of Sinestro, and he was kind of inspired by. He basically was making him Space Hitler, and he called it, like, my struggle, Mein Kampf. So they were like, oh, because you were inspired by Nazi iconography, you are automatically a Nazi. Never mind the fact. I mean, if you go back, Star Wars: A New Hope. I mean, there's definite parallels, like with Triumph of the Will, Leni Riefenstahl, that that documentary, and it's like, so I mean, people, or even more, a semi more recent example. Look at Starship Troopers. You remember the costumes that the officers wore? If those weren't Nazi inspired, for God's sake. So I mean, it's these, I see such weak arguments.
Yeah, the place that it's really, and I know that just by saying this name, I'll be, to some people I'm discredited off the bat and whatever. But I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, and that has been, like, to me, like, I feel like a conspiracy theorist, because I've seen interviews of his by mainstream media people, like mainstream news sources like CNN and NBC,
Right.
edit him so that he isn't saying what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've literally seen them do that. They have a message. They've decided ahead of time he's alt-right and that he hates women, and they just, no matter what he says, he can in a interview defend women and say that's not at all. He completely disavow the alt-right, and they'll re-edit those words to make it sound like he's saying he supports them. Okay,
Yeah.
And it's just that that ideology. And I see that happening with the Comicsgate people too. Like, it doesn't matter. They can say anything. You can do anything, and you're going to be labeled Nazi. They're going to take anything you say and flip it onto that. So, like,
yeah, to make it fit their narrative.
And even me, just by saying that they're not Nazis, I'm going to be, people will say that. But,
Yeah,
oh.
right. No, fair enough. And I agree with you. I mean, I noticed, like, for the longest time I watched, CNN and was silly enough to think that they were being as, they didn't have an agenda. Well, when I woke up to that was
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. A news source be, even-handed. Well, when I woke up it was actually in response to, it was a Black Lives Matter thing where basically what happened was it was a funeral for someone that was like, someone that was, I think it was someone who was shot, who was running from police and had a gun. And they were filming, I don't know if it was at the funeral or right after, was they were talking with the sister of the man that was shot. And she was basically, the way that they portrayed it was she's calling for people to not, because she was saying, don't go into the cities and burn things down, don't trash anything, let's not do that. And so CNN portrayed it as, she's calling for peace. But they didn't play the rest of the clip where she's like, go to the suburbs, burn their stuff. Right?
Yeah. I remember that.
And it's like, what? I mean, that completely changes the context. But, I mean, tell me that's not trying to sell a narrative. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's jarring, and it makes it difficult to determine, where can I get, and I find myself kind of, it's like a hodgepodge of, or it's kind of like I check different sources and try to make sure that I'm getting the, full story rather than one news outlet spin. Yeah. Hold on. You're the rare time when I usually kind of do these on the fly, but I did have a bit of a set agenda. I hope I'm not keeping you or anything. I'm not.
No worries. Yeah, I should go probably by the next 5-10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see here. The one thing that I did want to talk with you, and this might be a good, well, two things actually. First thing, I noticed that with Axe Cop on the website, it looks like it hasn't been updated in about a year. So are you closing the book on it? Is it all done, or?
Sorry, I guess. Sorry, what'd you say?
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. So I understand. Fathering comes first. But I was basically asking, I had noticed on the Axe Cop website that it hadn't been updated with new content in about a year. So are you closing the door on Axe Cop? Is that done, or?
I would say I've never really closed the door on Axe Cop. I think we did last Christmas. I think it was last Christmas or the Christmas before. Me and Malachi wrote a new Axe Cop Christmas story, but I just never got around to drawing it. It is something I think would be fun to revisit every once in a while, just to make something with Malachi and just kind of keep the character going. But or who knows if maybe one of my kids will want to pick up the torch at some point, or I don't know. I don't have this burning desire to there's the people sitting at Comic-Cons who just wish they could be that B movie star again and have that franchise start back up. I don't think. I'm fine with this being it on Axe Cop. But yeah, I mean, whatever. I always keep the door cracked. The door is cracked open.
Yeah. Hey, if if Bruce Campbell can play Ash, how many years later? Who's to say that Axe Cop can't come back?
Yeah, you never know.
I think a good way to end it, would be talking about, because I mean, we've kind of talked a bit about Comicsgate, and one of the things that that they're doing, and obviously you're not, you're doing kind of as well as, I kind of wanted to talk about the future of, comics as far as, I mean, is digital the future, or is crowdfunding for indie comics the future? And with slumping sales at DC and Marvel, I mean, look into your crystal ball. What do you see?
God, I don't know. I don't follow the comic industry very well. Like from that standpoint, I've always figured it's a miracle that they make money on them, because I don't know that many people that read them. Like
Mm-hmm.
that actually buy them. Like it's so competitive. It's such a small market.
Mm-hmm.
Though I think the one market that's growing is all ages, like
Mm-hmm.
Scholastic, and those books apparently are really growing, and those are some of their biggest moneymakers. So
Yeah.
I think that's one way to go. But for adult comics, more adult, like not adult comics, but you know
No,
what I
no,
mean.
I know. There's no
Mature.
easy way to say it. Yeah,
Yeah, how
yeah.
do you say it? Grown up people comics or whatever, or just older than 13.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think that that's one thing that I think Comicsgate. That's what like if someone's listening to this and they're a Comicsgate person, like this is what I want to say to any Comicsgate person, like where you're getting it right is this crowdfunding stuff and creating your own,
Mm-hmm.
you're funding your own stuff. I mean, for Van Cyber, however you say his name, to get 500 grand or 700 grand or whatever he made on
Right.
his
On
Indiegogo.
Cyberfrog. Yeah, yeah.
It's like, yeah, fine, DC and Marvel, like we'll make our own comics.
Right.
That's awesome. I think anybody should be proud. Like, think that's awesome. Like, how can you knock that? I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
see these mainstream creators knocking Comicsgate comics who are like doing their own Indiegogo campaigns and succeeding, and it's like, what do? You sit there and you write Batman or whatever, and you don't even make Batman up. What do you think you're on this high horse?
Uh-huh.
I think anytime an indie creator is making it is a miracle in this industry, and you should be happy for them.
It was
But
I don't know if you saw this, but Patton Oswalt was trying to crowdfund something, and he could. I don't even know if he hit his goal. And I mean, this
oh
is
really?
Patton Oswalt, right?
Yeah, how could that be? You'd think that he. What was it? That's bizarre.
It's some comic book, and I know that this was sort of the Comicsgate was kind of very smug about, because he was kind of trashing them, before this happened, and so that they were, keen to point out, hey, we're making, well over our goal, and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you can't get crowdfunded, and you're a giant celebrity.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the area. That's the part of comics that I don't like. I think, especially when they start going after diversity hires. Like,
Hmm.
I understand, like, and I even get it. The concept of diversity and the enforcement of it, I think, it's it's actually just veiled conformity. It's like we'll get all these people that think exactly like we do, but they'll have different skin colors. It's like it's
Hmm.
not a diversity of anything but skin color, really, not of not of ideas.
Right.
So I get that, and I think that you can desire for the culture to become diverse without adopting that philosophy.
Hmm.
Just can't force it, just like the chat room just said. And so I get the frustration of that, but I also think that you're never in a good position if you see somebody get hired and make a comic book, at DC, and then you start attacking them as a diversity hire. Like, that's just no way you're not going to look super racist and mean,
Hmm.
attacking somebody in their career and going after them like that. Like, I see people doing it, and just don't do that. There's nothing to be gained from that. I don't see what you guys
Right.
think you're going to gain from that. I would not do that. And in general, I just think take the high road. I think they're on the right track with creating and doing Indigo campaigns and just making stuff and being open to anybody who wants to express an opinion.
Hmm.
It's where they lose me is that stuff where there's targeting people and they're harassing and they're just being very combative and kind of they're being the way the other side's being. And I just don't like.
Fair enough. Okay, so one last thing, and then I'll let you go. I did see that your tweet about looking for recommendations for your 11-year-old daughter, like movies.
Yeah.
Um, might I recommend Lindsay Lohan emaciation and whatever the hell she was taking. Maybe I don't know, like Herbie Fully Loaded or Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen or something like that. I know it's a bit old, but
Yeah, I think she always watched. She's like the last couple of birthday parties she had. She watched the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap,
okay.
and so I was trying to find something comparable to that.
Yeah, she put out a lot of stuff before she kind of went nuts.
Yeah, so I found something. I sent my wife a list of things that people had recommended and that were in that genre.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here's my daughter. Here she is. Here. Have you ever seen Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen?
No.
That's with the same girl that's in Parent Trap. You're on a podcast right now.
Oh, a podcast.
Yes, you are.
Like famous.
Mhm.
You're absolutely famous. How you doing?
Oh,
Enjoy
Very special.
enjoy your sleepover party.
good. Oh, I like your user picture.
Oh,
Hamburger.
that is
that
a,
hamburger.
that is a
That's
I think
delicious.
it's the Meat Mountain from Arby's. It's kind of an inside joke, but yeah, it's this enormous. It's not even something you can get on the menu. It's like it's like roast beef and chicken and like all these things, and it's probably like a zillion
everything.
calories. Yeah, just if you want to not live very long, it's a viable option. But all right, well, thank you very much for hanging out with us. I very much appreciate it. And last thing, when someone in the chat, I'm an Asian American guy. I understand I will not see many Asians represented in the NBA. That is very true. You have to understand each restaurant's secret menu. That's very true. There's actually one at I think it's the Land Sea Air Burger from McDonald's. Have you heard about this?
No. Land, sea, air.
Yeah, so it's you have to order it.
Land is cow.
Yes.
Sea is fish. Air
Yes.
is bird.
Um,
I like it.
Oh.
yeah, so it's chicken. Yeah, so it's a chicken patty, it's a burger, and it's a fillet of fish. And you have to order it off the menu.
Chickens don't fly.
Yeah,
I know.
was like a
Seagull or something.
I would rather
I
eat
feel
chicken
like
than
they need-
seagull.
I think we need to switch to goose. I talked about that on Twitter. I'm tired of. I think chickens get the bad. We eat 9 billion chickens a year on the
Yeah.
Earth,
Yeah.
and like maybe 30 million geese. That's like
Well, how about
That's-
how about
you know how
duck?
many
Can
more
we
that
can,
is?
can we can we compromise with
Geese.
duck?
geese are jerks. We need to be eating. Goose.
I know geese are pecky. They peck you. I mean, not to say that chickens
I
are.
want to start a goose nugget franchise. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they hiss at you too, don't they?
Yeah. No,
They're
all
that's
snobby.
swans.
They think, oh, we're way cooler than chickens, and you guys build all these parks for us to hang out at. Like they think they're royalty.
Yeah, and there's and it would be Canada would be a great source for that, because I mean you always see like Canadian geese everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a great economy right there. All right, well, thank you very much for hanging out with us, Ethan. And
Yeah, thank you.
It's very much a pleasure, and I hope we can talk again sometime. I hope you feel better, get well soon, and take care of yourself.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, have a good night.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was definitely a very cool experience. Thank you for hanging out with me. Duck meat is leaner, it's an acquired taste. Duck meat is phenomenal. If it's like Szechuan duck, dude, fantastic. I love duck. If you get like, and you can buy them, well, I'm sure I'm kind of, preaching to the crowd with you since you're Chinese, but yeah, I mean, if you go to like an Asian market, like there was one particular Asian market I used to go to, and they would sell you like a half a duck. Oh my god, it was amazing. The Peking duck. Yeah. But the one problem with duck is that even though it's a lot like chicken, it's really greasy. It's a lot greasier than chicken, and turkey. So I mean that's the one drawback. But otherwise, yeah, duck is amazing. Quack. All right. So here's the deal. I may be back tomorrow. I've been talking with Guru Larry, and I kind of need to touch base with him. He said that he would most likely be able to do something this weekend, so potentially tomorrow, possibly Sunday, I'll be sitting down and talking with Guru Larry. But I thank you very much for everybody for hanging out with me. This was definitely an enlightening experience, probably the closest to a full-on celebrity that well, definitely so far, but probably that I'll ever talk with on Skype on here. But thank you for coming, and I'll do my sort of outro, and I'll see you guys soon. So let me do my little special things. And yeah, it is greasy. Yeah, it's the price of admission, unfortunately. But yeah, duck is fantastic. Even if it's not like Szechuan or Peking, yeah, just duck in general. And I think it's kind of like because it's kind of like dark meat. I know this is a fascinating conversation after talking about comic books and stuff. Whoever left a dislike is an asshole. That's fine. That's fine. People are entitled to their opinion. Alright. Yeah, that's what I thought. It is dark meat. And I do like dark meat on my chicken, so, and turkey, so it only makes sense that I like it so much. The dumpster. Alright. I'm out of here. Thank you for coming out, and I'll keep this public, so if you guys want to, go back and listen to it, then you can do that. Other episodes are available for $1 on Patreon. I have been archiving everything, and there for those people. And everyone else, I will talk to you later, and next show will probably be with Guru Larry, hopefully. Have a good night.